Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition. In the last part, we finished off the Temple of War, headed to Sierra, and then had to head down here to Pico de Gallo due to some roadblock in a way that we didn't quite see yet, actually, for our 7th anniversary plus 1 week, and now within a fairly short time span, we're back again for 190 subscribers. Admittedly, we've been actually at 190 since I want to say like a day or two after my break started. It's just that, admittedly, I wanted to wait until I had both recordings available to me time span wise, because then the game's mechanics would still be in my muscle memory more actively. And I know I basically say the same thing every single time, but thank you guys so much for that landmark subscribers. Every one counts when you have an audience as small as we do, and I can't thank you guys enough for that, really. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Now, the Pico de Gallo from here on is still more or less what I mentioned towards the end of the last part. Quite a few ideas that would actually be better explored in the sequel, which, as I mentioned, I want to say is because it just makes sense developmentally that Guacamelee 2, or Super Turbo Championship Edition really, was kind of an exploration of things they could potentially do for 2 when it comes to the new content. And honestly, it very much seems like that. Oh, and hey, a purple block. Yeah, this is another reason why I actually did some of the El Infernio stuff last part, so I could actually come over here and break these blocks along the way. There's still a few other purple blocks I'm not able to get to at the moment just because they're so out of the way, but don't worry, they'll be taken care of probably next part. Now, I don't know exactly how they want you to get through there. I want to say they want you to wait until you do a certain other couple of things, but you can just tank the hit from these spikes and just come on down here anyway. Now, something I'm not entirely certain about, comparatively, is chest numbers between the two versions. Obviously, they had to have added some chests just because there were more areas added. As well as I've said a couple times now, move some stamina and health chunks around just to accommodate all that. But I'm not exactly sure of how many new chests exactly were added. Most of them are obviously money chests, just because it's the most common type of chest in the game. But I also want to say they may have outright replaced some redundant money chests in other areas prior or otherwise with the new Intenso chests. Now, the thing is about Pico de Gallo difficulty-wise, honestly, it's not that much harder, if at all, than the Temple of War. However, what it lacks generally in platforming, comparatively, it actually makes up for by at least having the new shadow enemies that were introduced last part. I guess that is kind of a weird thing now that I think about it. Guacamelee 1, its dungeon design is very split between combat and platforming, because the Temple of War, I think, has some of the best platforming in the game, whereas here, admittedly, while obviously the mechanics are very Guacamelee 2, they more or less bank on this one idea the entire dungeon and don't exactly do too much crazy with it. That's one thing Guacamelee 2 does really well. Each area has its own platforming gimmick, yes, however, they do it extremely well, and then they use that gimmick again in later areas. Guacamelee 2 changed a lot of the fluff around in my eyes, between mixing the combat and platforming a bit better, and just having better in both mechanic-wise. Better in both categories mechanics-wise, rather. Although I will say, it's kind of interesting, because the Guacamelee LP here might be the only time I can think of in my LPs that a sequel was released during the LP. Not that it was announced during, because I think I even talked about Guacamelee 2 happening at some point in, like, part 1. But it's one of those interesting ways with how things work. Also, you want to be careful, because those spikes will insta-kill you. It's actually kind of a holdover, for, again, into what will become Guacamelee 2. In Guacamelee 1, there's not too many instant kill obstacles, or at least that would reset you to the beginning of the room while also killing you, thus reverting any chests of progress you got. It's basically just lava, but in these last few areas, they actually did add a few more red glowing spikes, which actually do the same thing. Guacamelee 2 would differentiate those by having them be red with a white glow, or do I have that reversed? Either way. These platforms are interesting. The direction they go actually depends on what dimension you're in. When you're in the world of the living, they go one way, world of the dead, they go the opposite. Usually a little bit faster, I think, on one end, but I'm not entirely certain about that. Also, one thing I do have to give Super Turbo Championship Edition over to the original Guacamelee. Due to the added areas, I feel like getting all the upgrades throughout just exploring is a bit more doable. And what I mean by that is not in terms of like the ones you find in the areas. I do mean the money for the ones in the shop. Because if I recall gold correctly, there was usually some grinding I had to do by the end of my playthroughs with the amount I fought. The added enemies here do a pretty good job of not only allowing you to get everything that was in the original shop, but I think also the new stuff, namely the Intenso upgrades, obviously. And they are expensive. 4,000 gold is a lot. Ah, yeah, switch. And that opens the doors all over the place. And one thing the game doesn't show you in a bit of a kind of clever moment in terms of just having to remember it was there, is you might remember, briefly, you would have had to really pay attention at the end of the last part, when we were in this room talking to the Trio de la Muerte. By the way, for some reason you can move during the end of that cutscene. There was a skull door on the bottom right of this room. That is now open, so we're going to be taking care of that in a few moments. Yeah, why not? Get some more upgrades. I do think that compared to some other Metroid-like games that use shop systems, I think Guacamelee does one thing right, and I think it gives you a decent chunk of, well, chunks just to progress through the game with from the shop. So in the case you don't want to explore, you can at least still a good amount of upgrade from the stamina and health chunks. Obviously, for better health and stamina, which will help you in any given situation, be it combat or platforming, you want to get as many as you can, but for those who are minimalists, I could see that being a fun run. For some reason, having a checkpoint for this area, by the way, seems really weird. I don't understand why. I mean, yeah, there's an instant kill thing there, but that would usually, I think, just reset you to the beginning of the room, wouldn't it? Or actually, I might be thinking Guacamelee 2, because instant kill in Guacamelee 2 works different than Guacamelee 1. Yeah, now I think about it, it would reset you to the last checkpoint, so actually, you know what? Good on them for putting it there. They remembered how Guacamelee 1 works. I didn't, clearly. Also, I have to say, easily one of my favorite graphics in the game is the weird steampunk skeleton in the background. That's just awesome. I don't think I've seen many other mediums do that kind of idea with a skeleton. It just looks so cool. Usually it's a steampunk statue or a giant bronze statue possessed by a Greek god's anger, and God of War 2's intro is awesome, but at the same time kind of weird. Easily, I think I mentioned it briefly last part, one of the strangest things to get used to, coming back to Guacamelee 1 after beating 100% 2, is the exploders. Because any exploder is basically instant kill, or at least a room reset if you let it explode, if I recall correctly in the sequel. Maybe at least the darker colored ones. I forget about the standard ones. But here they're all just damage. Oh yeah, choose a statue. That was it. That was my last statue. You win, Luchador. Here is your final power. Grab onto a wall, and while holding Y, press left or right to goat fly. Essentially, it's the wall climb, only now it can go horizontally. In Gold Edition, obviously, since the Pico de Gallo and Cano de las Fueras didn't, I'm probably butchered that pronunciation, sorry, didn't exist, this was actually located elsewhere. If I recall correctly, this was located somewhere in the Sierra, because I think the Sierra had to explore a bit around more, like, I think. In fact, I think I recall where it was. I think you just had to go to the right, the left of where the bridge was. But they moved it over here just to give this area an actual important power-up, which, you know what? Good on them for that. And notable, as you just saw there, similarly to how the wall climb can break rooster uppercut blocks, the goat fly can break dashing derp blocks. So, in the case you see one of those, you across a wall, and especially at a distance away, you can just use the goat fly and you can use it. Also notable, if you run into a slanted surface, when you, well, at least of a certain depth, when you're using the goat fly, it will direct you downwards with the curve. Guacamelee 2 actually uses that for some puzzles. Not so much here in 1, comparatively. But with that, we are now a fully upgraded Juan in terms of pure abilities. Obviously, we still need to get every one of them 100% items and everything else in the shop, but that won't take too long. Oh, I love that background. I don't know what it is about sunset backgrounds, but I always just love them. Easily, I know it's one that's often brought up when talking about it, but one of my favorites is admittedly the Donkey Kong Country Returns levels, where it's like a complete black foreground but sunset background. That is just gorgeous. Something about those reds and yellows, man. It just touches me in the right places. This room's kind of weird because it's just a fall down that has a random chest along the way. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they just ran out of places to put things. Doesn't really matter too much. If it was, I'd say more complaints about that if it was like a stamina or health chunk, but since it's just gold, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, it does for percentage sake because every chest counts, but you get what I mean. Now, one thing I was actually looking at my Steam library before recording this and realized is that Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition actually has fewer trophies than gold. Achievements, rather, because technically it's Steam. But obviously, if you're playing this on the Vita, it would have less trophies and such. And I don't know why, but I just find that weird. Usually the re-release adds more. Hell, in a bit of a moment of annoyance for me, I platinumed Spider-Man PS4 within like 4 or 5 days of getting the game, I think. Roughly a week or so after release or so. And the new Game Plus mode they're adding is actually going to add a couple more trophies, so gotta go back to that. It shouldn't be too bad. Though I am looking forward to that DLC when it comes out. Okay, let's see here. Super Turbo Championship Edition on Steam, 30 achievements, Gold Edition, 60. Double the amount of trophies. As you can probably guess, some of them are probably just superfluous. But on the whole, it is worth noting that the lower achievement count makes the game easier to get a platinum for if you're trying to go for those. If you're a trophy hunter in general, it just makes it a bit of an easier game to go through everything for. Though, easily one of the hardest trophies is common with both versions. I'll talk about that when we end the game. So, be careful with that. This game isn't easy to 100%. Oh yeah, the wrestler enemy. Yeah, despite being a new enemy for the game, they really don't use it that often. Which is kind of strange. At least I recall it being new. It seems like it would be new given the added mechanic of the undodgeable attacks, which I do not recall being in gold at all. But, some things you just forget. Also, I know they've been appearing for quite a few parts now, but the best way to take care of exploders, that are at least of the standard variety, the green ones, do any given special move and then a 1-2-3 combo. That will usually take them out. Soak in 2 special moves, or I think maybe even 1 if you're in Intenso, but yeah. And speaking of which, notably, the goat climb, the wall climb and the goat fly can be used to damage enemies. In fact, you will have to use the goat fly for that eventually. But it's notably weaker than any other special move you have at this point. And that opens that door, giving us access towards the boss fight. But notice that Intenso Fragment, you're technically supposed to wait until a little bit later to get that. Not much later, at most maybe 5-7 minutes, but if you can carefully use Juan's abilities, you can get that right now by dashing, Restore Cup, Dash, Derp Derp, and Wall Climb. You can probably do those in a couple different orders, but that's the one that makes the most sense to me. Because obviously, as you can see, you're supposed to probably goat fly from over here, and we're going to come out to the top of that area at some point. So for right now, let's just head through this door to the Pico Skull Room. I don't know why, but rooms like this that have a lot of the enemies in cages just reminds me of this one room in the Subspace Emissary. I want to say it was on the Halberd. Tell Kalaka we agreed on 10,000 Skeletos. Now it's his turn to deliver.
You said 10,000. He said he's subtracting the 500 destroyed by that masked muscle fella.
What? Give me that skelephone. Now listen here, you noodle-waving wienerhosen. We had a deal. Kalaka, you reneging rooster wrangler. This isn't over. Oh, it's all over. We're cursed to forever be the terrible trio. No Pedro, no reunion tour, no Abuelito award. This is all because of that demise dingus smashing up all our creations.
That demise dingus behind us?
Ah! You've undone all our work. You killed Pedro.
Let's get him.
And new boss for Super Turbo Championship Edition is the Trio de la Muerte. Obviously, since the entire Pico de Gallo is new. In fact, that's actually why, you might recall, back in part 1, when Juan gets killed by Calaca, they enter at the last second because they were new to the game. Here in the first phase, they have the combo shield in the way, but all they do to attack is just fire around Mario Zelda fire bars, and that's it. They take any damage you throw at them. That's enough rehearsing. I think it's time we usher in the crowd. For Phase 2, they are actually invulnerable unless you use a suplex with the effect boost to cause a shockwave to hit them, or if you just outright throw these skeletons into them in total. They do regenerate their little invincibility song eventually, but otherwise they'll tank any damage you throw at them once again. Or rather, they'll take. If they tank it, they survive it.
Wow, that crowd should turn on us. Are we losing our touch?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The latter half of the fight is very different. Remix! During this phase, all 3 of the Trio de la Muerte are firing lasers out of them. No point in the screen on the portion of the screen they're on is safe. You have to, for instance, get on the wall if it's on the bottom, or stay towards the bottom if it's on the top. Notable, what you have to do here is attack each of the 3 individually, because they each have their own portion of the health bar. In the middle of that phase, basically the last fourth of their health is reached, they will go into a bit of invincibility, laser spam at this point. Just keep an eye on where they are and dodge carefully. It's very easy to take a lot of damage here. In fact, I dare say, barring probably the final boss, this is probably the easiest portion of the game to take damage in, and easily one of the easiest places to die. This is actually kind of a hard boss for the latter half. And you know what? I appreciate that. It's kind of a nice breath of fresh air compared to X-talby and Flameface. And this should be it. Yeah, I even have my low health jingle. Yikes. That took a lot of damage.
Boss, I can't feel my legs.
Those are my legs, and I can't feel them either.
Pedro, is that you? Come closer. Pedro, dear friend, you've returned. At last, Calaca has rewarded our efforts.
We may lay broken, but its time is up for that pesky luchador. The mortal world's destruction is assured.
Ah, I hear the voices of angels.
Hush now, my boy. It won't be much longer. Is it weird that I feel kind of bad for them? I actually kind of wish, in a weird narrative moment, that if you went to El Infernio from this point, you could actually find all 3 of them plus Pedro. Because I would like to see what Pedro not only looked like, but also just kind of see what his dialogue would be like. Obviously, that they're villains, so they would probably... Actually, no, based on the Voices of Angels line, they probably didn't go to El Infernio, which is weird, given that they are villains. But I guess because their only sin was missing their friend, it doesn't count as much? Question mark? And there's the Olmec for Pico de Gallo. But with that, we're now back in Sierra Morena. I want to say over here is where the goat climb may have been in Gold Edition, but I forget the exact level design of the Sierra Morena in Gold. Because one of the things with the Sierra Morena in particular is that the bridge that's broken, I recall being broken in Super Turbo Championship, because you need the goat fly to finish this area no matter which version of the game you're playing, but I forget the exact circumstances of what you need there. It's just kind of one of those things. Though we do get this combat room, which I recall being in the original game. It's actually one of my favorites just because I like the concept of it. Got a lot of exploders located all over the place, but we just have to jump over the giant wall of spikes. And I forget if those are reset spikes or not. I want to say they aren't, but avoid touching them all the same. Admittedly, though, with the wall climb, you're going to fly right over them anyway. Now, one thing that I like that they did, looking at the intensometer, because we just got the full the next upgrade for it, that a couple other games with that kind of system do, is they keep the... And I think I may have mentioned this a couple parts ago. That's one of the problems, again, with doing a game like this over the time period I do it. I might forget some minor things I say. Is that with the intensometer, they keep the bar where you can activate it where it is. It's just the fact you get more time with it the more you upgrade it. And I love it when games do that. Like that, in particular. Long time no see, Jaguar.
I admire your fighting spirit, Luchador. But you cannot win in the face of such power. Do not follow me any further. If you do, these mountains will be the end of you.
I haven't seen him since, like, what? 20 minutes of the way through part 1 or something. It's been a while. Either way, we're actually back in the room where we could get to the Pico de Gallo from, because there is a chest right there that I always suck at aiming to get to. What you need to do is gulp fly off the far wall in this room, but I always forget exactly where you need to do it from. You need to do it from when you're roughly equal to that singular platform that you can see on screen briefly here. If you do it just right, you fly past that single platform right to the chest. Sped that up just because I was there for like 2 or something minutes, just failing. Didn't want to edit it all out because you would need to see exactly where I was aligned, but I didn't want you to sit through all of that. And here's where you would need the goat fly to get past, so now we can just go this way. I want to say where the Pico de Gallo exit is here is where the goat fly was, but why am I all the way back here? The game can be a bit weird with where it teleports you sometimes, because the way it's supposed to work, I think, is the last solid ground you touched, which maybe the reason I didn't get teleported to the right was I was on the bridge, which isn't solid ground. But it's a bit funky with that. As you can see, the Sierra has quite a few wide open areas, and there are some items in these, but I'm not going for all of them yet just because I'm saving that for cleanup. And admittedly, it makes sense to save this area for cleanup too, because we're so close to the point where cleanup was going to begin. Admittedly, I think the Sierra does one thing right in that I think it throws basically any enemy throughout the game at you that feels right, while also still saving some enemies for later on areas. And we want to go fly from the lower platform here because that will allow us to float, or fly, right underneath this platform over to here where we can get some items. I think I may have actually missed something right here based off where I didn't goat fly, but I honestly forget because, again, been a while. And even then, I'll remember where everything is come time to clean up. But hey, get another Intenso fragment at least. You can never have enough of those. I forget exactly where the health, stamina, and Intenso bars end. We're not quite there yet, obviously. I think there's at least one thing of Intenso left. But there definitely is also some space on the top bar between the first and second players. You know what I mean? And I'm going to apologize ahead of time for my actions in this room, because I played this room admittedly a little bit sloppy. You'll see me wandering back and forth just because it's such a wide open room that I forget where I should and should not be checking. But thankfully this doesn't happen too often in the game from what I recall. And admittedly, this is how I play the game when I'm playing blind too. Blind Metroid-likes, I'm always playing checking every corner. And this is one of the more interesting combat scenarios in the game because you have a bunch of exploders as well as instant kill spikes. I was here for a little bit, admittedly. And I was here so long I actually managed to get my Intenso back, which helps me out in the long run because taking out these exploders over the spikes with 3 goat flies in a row eats up so much time that it's not really worth surviving, or rather, survival is tough. It is obviously worth surviving, but it can be tough to time. I don't think the sequel has any combat sections exactly like this. Usually the instant kill scenarios are a bit more puzzle-like in factor. Like there's one I immediately think of where there's these platforms based in lava, like in the Pico de Gallo actually, that are on the top and bottom of the floor that are constantly raising and lowering. And your goal is to figure out a way to go fly between all of them, taking out the exploders in the process. Actually, now I think about it, it's basically the exact same thing, only better. I especially spent like 3 minutes around here just flying back and forth to see if I missed anything, so I'm just going to jump cut to me and realizing there was nothing and moving on. I don't have quite enough yet. This is one of the longer rooms in the game, actually, in terms of like pure length. You're going to be switching between realms at an increasing rate to the point where it almost feels like you're mashing the button. If you fail, you're going to have to fall and, well, start the room over. No real punishment otherwise, but it's still annoying. I suppose that is kind of the thing with these puzzle rooms where they just teleport you back to the start. It doesn't feel like there's enough punishment, but at the same time, some of the platforming can be tough enough to the point where just finishing it feels satisfying. Oh, hey, Jaguar. We are very close to the end of this area, I should note, so In the case you want to go back and you have enough money to buy something, I do recommend doing it, especially if it's like a health chunk, because with the upcoming section can be difficult. Can be. Doesn't mean it is, but it can be, depending on what your health is and your stamina chunks and how you play it. Oh, hi there, person from Journey. You almost made it to the top of the mountain.
You've come a long way, Luchador. I'll give you that. Not everyone can make it through the Sierra. Unfortunately, I made it here as well, and my job is to kill you. It's been centuries since I've fought a worthy opponent. May the best man win.
Next boss is Jaguar Javier. And he is potentially the most active boss in the game. He matches you very much move for move, and he only really has 2 notable attacks. A standard wall slam. Oh, he also has that laser attack, but I always forget he has that because I think that was added for Super Turbo Championship. And a bit of a rolling somersault attack where he causes shockwaves in the ground. He loves his shockwaves, and he recovers his shields faster than I think any enemy in the game can. And he has access to all 4 of them at any point, meaning you might have to pay attention to what he's doing at what point. Otherwise, you might be doing no damage. However, notably, I also think he has less health than any boss in the game to balance that out. So this feels more like you're fighting a bit of a clone of yourself in a way. And you know what? I like that. This is actually my favorite boss fight in the game. Of course, there's always just something good about well-designed boss fights against people who are more or less your Proto Man, or Proto Man's basically the best comparison I can think of. Albeit Proto Man in the classic series as a boss fight was never interesting. Battle Network, though, delicious. Especially FZ. That fight is hard, but that's a really good fight. The best I can say about this fight is keep an eye on him more so than yourself, but also just make sure you're not taking any really stupid hits, because I can take a couple of those because I'm extraordinarily reckless, and that's obviously not recommendable. Not much pattern recognition, though, sadly. That's gonna make this fight just a little bit better. Enough! Oh, I almost feel bad for you now. Oh, that's so sad.
You have bested me, Luchador. I was wrong to doubt your spirits. Just when I had lost all faith in humanity and resigned myself to the coming edge of the dead, I see that hope, love, and perseverance still burn within your kind. Perhaps I should have tried to stop Kalaka myself, but cowardice eclipsed my honor. I doubted my own strength. It was never my true choice to serve him. Kalaka forced my hand by threatening to kill my ancient master. I'm a bad kitty. Please leave me here to lick my wounds.
I don't know why, but maybe it's because of the way he's crouching down, but this always reminded me of Sonic 3 and Knuckles in Sky Sanctuary Zone when Knuckles is on the ground kind of being like, go on. Oh, hey, wait, Trevo.
Poor Jaguar. Juan, make sure to punch Kalaka in the face for me. Do that, and we will become bros. And in accordance with the bro code, your mother will become off limits. Maybe. Anyways, the Great Temple lies ahead, and within it, Kalaka. Before you proceed, you should head back home and power up. The journey forward will be perilous.
Be careful in there, Juan. Kalaka is going to throw everything he has at you. And he means that. Right now, we are right before endgame. What you're supposed to do now is goat fly from that little flat portion on the wall to the right, at which point you will reach the final area. Thankfully, you can backtrack from it, but I'm going to save even the reveal for the Great Temple until after cleanup. That's right, we're starting to clean up now, and we're not finishing it today, but we get a good portion of the way through, because what I'm going through today is more or less the smaller areas. Point Bluco, Agave Field, the Temple of War. I try to do El Infernio, but not entirely. I'll talk more about that in a bit. And one other area beyond that. And admittedly, a lot of these are items that I missed kind of stupidly, or rather I could have gotten earlier, but I just completely forgot to because I was either too far away, or I just plain forgot they were there. Some of them, though, I couldn't get because I didn't have the Dashing Derp yet, the Goat Fly, so on and so forth. So with that, let's head to our first destination down in El Infernio, because now that we have the Goat Fly, we can progress further into El Infernio's challenges. Namely, we can actually do all of them now. So let's get back to that floor when I needed to destroy that block with the Pollo Bomba, and then head on up. Notable, even though we have the Goat Fly, Technically, we can't do everything in here yet. I think Challenge 9, the one where you need all your special abilities to get through some areas, still can't be done yet because the wall you think you might need the goat fly for is actually covered in that green stuff you can't cling to. We need to wait a bit longer to do that, but rest assured I will do it before the LP is over. And also, these last tiers are easily the hardest in the game. In fact, you may have seen there was a jump cut there, because this one is a one hit and you're out kind of challenge. Thankfully, it's also if you just finish it and you get a gold kind of challenge. I think in gold, if this was here, I forget the exact challenges in gold, because some of them I think were slightly changed to incorporate Nintendo a little bit better. This was one I did not beat, which made getting the 10 required gold medals a bit annoying. Probably the hardest part's honestly coming up right here, because they go from throwing the Aluxes at you to 2 normal skeletons and a panther skeleton, which is not an easy enemy to take out while also taking out others and avoid getting damaged. Thankfully, with the help of Intenso, he's much easier to stun and therefore destroy. The hardest part of this is probably over now, though I think there's one other really annoying enemy type that I can throw at you here. Oh, I know. For some reason, I thought they threw the Thunder guys at you. No, they don't. Next one. Use the Go Run and Go Fly to get to the end of the course. This is a pure platforming one, and this is also one of the easier goals to get when you're not screwing up like I do. My best advice when it comes to getting golds and challenges on a platform that you really screw up on, the moment you make a screw up, within like the first 30 seconds, just reset anyway, just because you're so early in usually out of them that 30 seconds can be redone easily. But if you're within like the 45-second plus mark, keep on trucking and see what you can make out of it, just because you're such a far distance through it that you might still be able to make it. With one major exception later on. Easily my least favorite challenge in the game, actually. Ow. The platforming challenges, especially in the later half of the challenges, really like to throw these little last-minute wrenches in your boot at you, because usually they'll have one last platforming challenge that's more or less just to spin off the other ones, but just so much harder based off, well, more annoying, not harder, based off the positioning of some item that you could lose a lot of time there. And I have to admit, the platforming challenges are easily some of the best designed platforming in the game in terms of trying to go through a time trial-wise, because there's some minor optional optimizations you can make that can really make you just get through it better, but it is annoying. This is my least favorite challenge in the game just because of how long it takes. We need to take that chicken there to the end of the area. The chicken only moves around in the world of the living, but you can punch it or throw it to get it from place to place. Notable, in the case you throw it while you're in the world of the dead, the momentum will carry over, but you need to unfreeze. Making this in under 2 minutes is really hard, and I think really tight. I would not be surprised if people gave up on the platinum for this game just due to this, because it is just that annoying. The spikes also bounce the chicken off in such a way that he'll usually be in a place where you can easily move him around from, but this is tedious. Also, a very weird thing, especially when the chicken's up to a wall, make sure you always throw the chicken forward, not from a backward state, because the backward suplex-like throw gets less distance than a forward throw. It doesn't matter what direction you are if you want to throw them upwards, but if you're trying to throw them left to right, always make sure you're facing the right direction. Yeah, look, we're about a minute through, and around a minute through, you're probably supposed to be at least on the next section of the area, like the next half of it. But here I am still in the first third or so. Admittedly, the, not hit detection, but the, what's the word? Collision, I guess, is probably the best way I can describe it, on the chicken with grabbing it is a bit picky. Because sometimes you can be right next to it, I think like right here, and you'll just outright miss. Now, admittedly, that might be me mistiming it so that I'm technically still in the world of the dead, but it's annoying all the same when it happens. Nothing really happens aside from getting teleported if you hit the green spikes, so you don't need to really worry about that. It's when the chicken hits them, especially in that area behind me, that you really need to fear it. Because very often, the chicken will bounce back to the start. In fact, I think usually the chicken bounces in such a way that he'll always return to a very select spot in a section, which wouldn't surprise me because that's actually kind of good design. I'm not saying this game's badly designed, but this section in particular can be rather dickish. Thankfully, this section here where the area starts to curve back and forth, you can usually make it through if you just throw the chicken straight up in this particular roundabout area. But you still need to be careful. And admittedly, the ending, on your me at least, can be a bit unclear, because what you need to do at the end of this little tunnel here, because we are near the end, is throw the chicken into some instant kill spikes. For some reason, my brain always thinks for a split few seconds that I need to throw him into the exits, which is very much not what you need to do. When it comes to getting a gold, this is easily one of the worst challenges. But hey, I got the silver, at least I'm satisfied with that. Challenge 16. Stay in the height of the deadly saws and climb to safety. Another platforming challenge, just once a race and another just gold to finish. Obviously, there was another jump cut there because this took a couple tries. This is one of those ones where even a minor setback can potentially make you fail, so be careful there. But I also recall in the original game, Gold, being here for a lot longer due to this section here. For some reason, my brain just could not handle this timing. You need to dimension swap right at the right moment, otherwise you're going to get knocked back and probably killed by the spikes. And also notable, because of that jump cut, because I did get here at least once, there were Pollo Bamba blocks, at least 3 in this section around that little shortcut area there. So if you didn't have Pollo Bamba, you had to go the long way around, so be careful there. And otherwise they just throw this skeleton here, which is also one of the biggest annoyances, but if you have Intenso, it goes down pretty quickly and you can just flee at that point. In practice, in execution, not too hard, but in practice, it can be a bit of an annoying middle platforming section. And now we're on to the next tier, which is a bit of a unique one. Why? Tier 7, or Floor 7, only has one challenge, a giant maze of combat arenas that you need to finish within a certain time to get the gold. The 2 minutes and 30 seconds needed for the gold is actually kind of strict. But thankfully, one saving grace about this area is that each arena spawns set enemies. So what I would actually recommend doing in the first time through is exploring around each room and figuring out what they have in it to figure out which rooms are the easiest, and then taking that route. I do believe somewhere on Google there's probably a map of what every room has with what enemies, and even probably a route that's the easiest to take. But this is what I found to be the easiest route, so yeah. Admittedly, it is a bit roundabout, because actually the goal in this area is in the top right of the map, so to speak. But to get to it quickly, I actually need to head to left, because there's easier enemies that way. But admittedly, also, I think Super Turbo Championship Edition would probably have a slightly different route to begin with, because the added addition of Intenso makes some rooms that were probably very hard in the original very easy, due to the increased damage and knockback. I only just got that poster in the background as a reference to the hang in there cat. Huh, haven't seen that picture in a while. This final challenge, admittedly, is one that is very intimidating on the first time through, but when you play the game for a few times, you probably find it to be one of the easiest ones. And admittedly, Guacamelee is one of those games that feels like more time is passing than it actually is when you're playing it, because Quan controls so smoothly and the combat moves so quickly that you get so sucked in that maybe a few seconds in-game feels like it's double that length. Of course, that could also be whoop, accidentally pressed pause instead of the one button. And rather, this could be an instance of the timer making me seem like I'm under more stress and duress than usual, meaning that time feels like it's moving slower for me. But it's one of those things. I believe at this point in the rooms, I'm on a one-way path that leads directly to the exit, so by this point, I'm pretty much good. In fact, this is the last combat room, so of course they throw 2 of the electric guys at me. But thankfully, Intenso makes this room very, very, very easy. And that's the gold medal at every challenge except for challenge 9 completed. And if we move over here, we just have a shortcut down. However, at this point, I only have golds in 7 challenges, meaning I have to get 3 more golds. Thankfully, I actually got silvers on some of the platforming challenges throughout it, so I'm just going to jump cut to me getting all 3 in those. And that opens the door. So let's go see what we unlock down there. Well, obviously we unlocked the Devil's Office because that was the whole thing we were trying to do here, but let's see what's going on. While jumping up this takes a bit, by the way. A winner is you. Nice wrestling, boxing reference. That's one of my favorite cat photos. And welcome to the Devil's Office. Luchador. Welcome to my office. Sorry about the clutter in here. Work piles up when you're used to managed, hey? I've been so busy since I've been back. You know, checking in on the team, keeping that morale high. So your assistance reopening my elevator is appreciated. Good luck getting Kalaka out of your worlds. I'm much too busy to assist, but there's something over there that may interest you. Now, the reward here depends on whether or not you're playing Super Turbo Championship Edition or Gold. Here in Super Turbo Championship Edition, we have another orb. In Gold, you got an outfit and some money here, I think. I think you can get access to the Diablo suit outfit. Which I think dramatically increases your power, but makes you take more damage, I think. Honestly, I don't use the outfits too much in this game. The most I might do on some playthroughs is switch over to Tostada. No, I feel inspired. I'm ready to lock myself up in here and take this paperwork on. They totally have things under control downstairs. Who even needs hands to type, right? Ever heard of Hunt and Peck? Oh, I feel bad for you. And that's the end of El Infernio for now. If you check the map, you only have 75%. But I'll go over why that is later. At this point, let's, I guess, check the shop on the way out and head on to the next area we're going to complete. I can't afford anything. Actually, but I should check. Was I right? Melee attack, steal life, more stamina, less life. Okay, so I was sort of right about the take more damage thing. I'll just stick with the standard one. And as for where we're going to head next, we actually do a bit of trekking to get to it. Because we're heading over to Puebluco in the Agave field, but the closest way to teleport there is to go to Forest del Chivo and walk all the way over to it. Now, admittedly, the two items in Puebluco I've been able to get for a while at this point, I believe. Both of them are in tandem related to the church where the tutorial combat of the game took place. The first one is at the very peak of the church. I've been able to get this ever since I've had, I think, just the Rooster Uppercut on its own, but kind of forgot to get it. And the other is in the church itself, and I think you might need go... No, you can just get here with wall jump, probably, actually, as long as you get the double jump. But that's Puebluco 100%ed. That's all we needed to do. The Agave field, though, you needed at least a Pollo Bomba to get the 100% in. So let's head on over there and get those items. The item we're after here, or in here, both of the items rather, because there's only two, are in relation to Juan's house. So let's head in here, and the first one, as you can see, we need the Pollo Bomba to get. And there it is, just some silver. I think that might be a stamina chunk in the original game. The other one, we need to head down here in Dimension Flip where this soccer ball is. I've been able to actually get this, technically, since I've had the ability to transform into a chicken and swap dimensions. I just always wait until now to get it because it's the only time I'm really over into Juan's house standardly, you know what I mean? Welcome to... I swear I haven't given up on getting through here. This is a maze. And making your way through it can be a bit complicated because it's actually, given the zoomed in camera angle, kind of a hard maze because you just need to kind of memorize where you're going. And something I swear the original game did, but this one never does for some reason, is zoom out on the map when you're done with it. Because if you actually pay attention to the shape of it, this map is shaped like a chicken. Actually, maybe you need to check the map to see that. Either way, I recall there being a zoom out. And this can be a bit of a long maze, and admittedly, past a certain point, it's easier just to finish it than it is to backtrack, just because it's an admittedly long maze. But at the end of the day, it is just a maze, nothing too hard to get through. No real danger here, aside from maybe your controller or laptop battery running out, depending on what you're playing it on. Or I guess I should just say battery running out in general. But at the end of the day, you don't really have to worry about it. Also, I really like the music here. I think that's exactly just the Dead World's Agave Field theme, but I love how echoey it is. The sequel would do something along these lines, but it was much smaller and admittedly easier to navigate too. In a way, I guess this is the game's way of saying, or doing a bit of a reference to all like the little morph ball mazes you had in the Metroid games. But at the end of the day, once you get to where that heart is especially, you are very close to the game. And why am I backtracking? I want to say there might be more than one way to get to the heart, but I honestly doubt it, because this seems like a maze where there's only one solution. I don't think I've ever gone down every pathway, but yeah. Once you're here, I believe you've pretty much won the maze just because there's only one path from here on. And I swear I recall the map zooming out around here in the original game, but it doesn't. And here, what do we have? But another entrance to Guacamelee. Thus, another orb. Now, admittedly, one thing I like that the game does, especially here in STCE, I forget if Gold does this, is that the title screen is actually of Guacamelee. And that gives you a hint that you're looking for these things to some extent, and I like that, because it tells you that these things are out there, you just need to find them. And admittedly, finding them is a bit of a daunting task on the first playthrough. But with that, we're done in Puebluco. Now we're going to head on over to Santa Lucita, because this is the next smallest area, and this is one of the next easily completed. And this is an item I've been able to get for a while, but I just forgot it existed because I was too busy doing other things. You might recall, way back when we talked to Flameface and had to find a way out of Hernando's little basement area, there was a chicken-sized tunnel that I have forgotten to backtrack to all this time. It's that item, and it's literally just this easy to get to. It was silver too. I want to say that was a health chunk in the original game. With that, we've now completed 5 areas, and next up we're heading over to the Temple of Rain. So I'm just going to jump cut over to there from the Olmec. And the destination here is pretty close to the Olmec. Again, this is only one item I've been able to get for a while, since you only need the Olmec's headbutt to get it. It's just that, in fact, I think I actually could have been 100% of this area on the first visit. It's just the fact that I had to come out of my way to get this box of silver again. I think it's a safe assumption that all the silver chests were probably health or heart chunks in the original game. Next up, we're heading to the Temple of War, because there's, again, only one item for us to get here, and it's fairly close to the entrance. Just need to head through all these little small hallways. And it should be coming up right after this skeleton, I believe. Out of my way, skeletons. Yeah, there it is. You need the Pollo Bomba to do this, but you need to remember something about the Pollo Bomba that it doesn't exactly tell you. I remember in Metroid how the bombs can boost you up when you're in Morph Ball mode. You need to do that, sort of. You need to lay eggs on top of each other, at which point they'll get boosted up. You see me looking at my map because for some reason I swear I'm thinking, do I need to go from a different area to get here? But no, you just need to do that. And that gets us more silver, which means I'm closer to an outfit that I don't feel like buying, really. Well, actually, I can buy 2 outfits at this point, so yeah. I do believe the outfits in this game, by the way, are locked to your account. So in the case that you have multiple files, they'll stay unlocked. Next up, we're in Forest Chivo, which has some of the most items for us to get at this point. I want to say 4 or 5. I want to say the area where you have to leave most of the items behind in your first playthrough of it because you just don't have the abilities yet is the canal area. Because I think at this point I only have 30% of the items in there, so I'm going to be doing some good amount of traveling in there next part. Now, an admitted thing that I have to wait on next part for is getting everything in El Infernio. The reason for that is that at this point, if you check the map, we only have 75% in there. The last 25% is probably the most annoying 25% to get in the game. Because what you need to do is get golds on every challenge. That is not easy. And I will be doing that towards the end of next part when I have the rest of the health stuff I need just to make some of the challenges that involve health, for instance, any little screw-ups on little platforming challenges that I didn't platinum or otherwise, just that little much easier. The main thing to me is stamina chunks, so I can do more special moves in a row. Because I think there's at least 1 or 2 more stamina points I can get in the game, and I want every single thing I can get. Also, I'll take that Intenso Charge boost. That's going to make some of those challenges a bit easier. Though I think most of the bronze and silvers I have at this point aren't just in the combat challenges, so don't have to worry about too much there when it comes to the Intenso. That'll help me out a bit in the long run. And one thing about this area in particular is that it has one of easily the more interesting laid out puzzles when it comes to getting an item. That's going to be the last thing we get here in a few moments, so I'll talk about more of that when time comes. Though I should note, if you also want to go after the tool tree items, this is probably one of the best places to do it from. Not for me right now, I'm saving tool tree for next part due to a certain platforming challenge in there I want to save for not last, but pretty close to last. But we'll see that when we get to it. Now, one thing I've always found interesting about Forest of Chivo is that it's potentially the only area in the game that I can think of where you cannot get every item until you have every ability. Some of the areas you only need most of the abilities, but to get 100% everything here, you need up to the goat fly. Which is interesting to me, but it's also kind of annoying because that means you might find yourself backtracking here back and forth a lot to get items only to find, oh, there's still a lot I can't get. This is why I saved cleanup in particular for endgame. Just because then I have every item, I can get everything in one fell swoop without having to needlessly backtrack over and over and over again. Compared to how I do, like, say, the Metroid games, where I'll get every item I can along the way. In this case, well, I did get a lot of items along the way. I think 70-something%, if not like 66. In your average Metroid game, I would probably have close to around 80% at this point. Gotta admit, though, easily has, well, I get on it for needing most of the abilities to get everything in the game. The way you get Forest of Chivo, because of those abilities, is admittedly some of the best design in the game, because you can see so many of the foreshadowings to it early on, that when you finally get an ability that the ability you need, it'll connect you to your brain, and you'll be like, oh, I see, that's how I get that. And I like it when games do that. That moment of catharsis and discovery is so important to me in Metroid-like games. And here is the item in question I was talking about earlier with one of the more interesting to get ones. You might remember, like, in part 2 or 3, probably part 2 I want to say, we pressed this switch. Now we can press it and actually get the item from it, because this entire time we needed the goat fly to get to the item in time, because we need to jump onto this, be it probably a bit lower than I was on it, and goat fly to the west. A very, very long way. At this point, you're probably going to want a goat slam, or a frog slam. But no, I can just fall through this normally. And this brings us to another Guacamelee. I love the way they did that, because that's such a good puzzle. Doesn't seem like it seems pretty simple, but that's because on your first playthrough, you're probably going to try and platform all the way to the left if you can figure out where that opening even is, and find it that way. But I just love the catharsis of it being so simple. I don't know why. The catharsis probably isn't the right word. I guess the joke of it, maybe, that you're overthinking it, and at the end of the day, it's just such a simple solution. And that is the Forest del Chivo completed. Notable, you can actually not leave through the way we came in, because that block is now there again. So we actually need to leave the other way, which leads us pretty wisely into the next area. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys so much for 190 subscribers. I'm sorry it took me so long to get these videos out, but school is a thing, although I'm definitely getting into the groove of it. I will definitely be back in time for the 22nd. And in part 6, whatever that may be for, we're going to be heading into Canal de las Flores and getting a lot of the items in there and potentially finishing up cleanup and starting up the final area. See you guys then.